Well, we're down at Rickenbacker Air Force Base with the hosts are the 121st Air Refueling Wing out of Rickenbacker. And the gentleman we have stand here, he's either retired from Hollywood or the Air Force, okay, or both. As Major General Lance Meyer, retired United States Air Force. General, could you, my pleasure. I've heard a lot about you. Of course, Shaker, tell us all about you.
Well, we're glad to have you here today.
Okay, and could you give us a rundown on your extraordinary career as a fighter pilot in the Air Force? Okay?
Well, yes, happy to do that. I've enlisted in the Air National Guard here at Rickenbacker in 1965, way back, and most of my career was flying fighters, jet fighters. I flew the F-100 for 7 years, and then we converted here to the A-7 Corsair II, and flew that for 19 years. And then I had the opportunity to fly the F-16 for 3 years, and then ended up here at Rickenbacker flying the KC-135s, which we're going to be going up in today to see a refueling.
How many hours single and multi?
Well, all of the fighter time was single engine, so that's close to 5,000 hours of fighter time, and then I just flew the KC-135s just for my last 3 years in the service.
Okay, where would you fly overseas?
Well, we had the opportunity to, shortly after I got back from pilot training, our unit was called to active duty for a year and a half, and 1 year of that we spent in Kunsan, Korea. That was back during the Vietnam War, and so we replaced an active duty fighter unit that was in Korea. So spent a year there. And we've had numerous deployments over the years to Europe and different places. So lots of different deployments.
And you're still walking. That's great, being a fighter pilot and having that many hours. That's you have. Okay, now let's get into some of the exciting stuff, which everything's exciting in a fighter aircraft, right?
Well, it can be. That's right.
Moments of boredom with seconds of sheer terror.
Yeah, that's correct. You've got that right.
Which airplane?
Fortunately, not too many of those sheer terror.
Well, evidently not. That's a credit to maintenance, right? And design.
Maintenance, you got to give them all the credit. We've got the world's greatest maintenance right here at Rickenbacker, and they do a fantastic job of keeping these airplanes going.
When you transition to KC or KC-135s, that's what you're flying now, right?
Well, I'm not flying anymore. I'm retired, so that was the last plane that I flew was a KC-135. But that transitioned into that right at the end of my career.
And when's the new one coming in?
Well, they're now making the new tanker. KC-46 is what they call it. It's actually a Boeing 767 modified to be a tanker, and those are being manufactured right now. And Rickenbacker is on the short list, I understand, to be selected as one of the bases that'll get those. So that's what everyone in this community is hoping for.
Okay, how old is the KC? When did that come online? Excuse me.
Well, that was that came in back in the 50s, so it's been around a long time. You think about your 57 Chevy, and that's an old airplane, but so much has been replaced on it. It's not the original engines, it's not the original avionics. Just about everything on that airplane's been changed over the years. So they're still a great airplane, and they're going to be around for a number more years. When
Colonel Shaker told me about this, I said, Colonel, those airplanes are almost as old as I am.
Yes.
I'm an old guy, World War II.
That's for sure. That's right. They've been around a while.
Okay, how about your command positions? Can you give us a review on that?
Well, I was in several different areas of command. I've been in the Ohio Air National Guard my whole career, so I've stayed right here in Ohio. But I was commander of the unit over at Springfield, Ohio, and where we flew the A-7 and then converted to the F-16. And then I came back here to Rickenbacker as the commander of the 121st Air Refueling Wing. So we're going to have an opportunity today in just a few minutes, to hear from the current commander of the refueling wing is going to come over and talk
How
to us.
about in your fighter commands?
Well, that was when I was at Springfield. That was all fighters. That was A-7s and F-16s over there as a commander over at Springfield.
And then from where, what did you move up from then?
Well, I continued, came over here as the commander of the refueling wing, and then ended up my career as in a part-time position out at Scott Air Force Base outside of St. Louis with Transportation Command, which is a joint command that handles anything that moves in the Department of Defense goes through Transportation Command. So I was out there in a part-time position before I retired.
You're a commander at Scott? I wonder if you're the guy I talked to. He called me up, and in a gruff voice, he says, "Do you own C-47 such and such?" Which I did. I bought surplus, and I sold it to an outfit in Arizona. They were going to convert it to a gunship.
Okay.
And I told the pilot, "You better run this up and get your mechanics to look it over real good, because we haven't flown it for a while." He's okay. He had a double engine failure and put it in, not complete, put it in at Scott. And the general there called me and says, "You get this thing off my base, I'll give you 30 days or we're going to bulldoze it."
That wasn't me.
That wasn't you.
I wasn't the commander out there, no.
Well, actually, I told him I'd sold it to the guy in Arizona, and he says, "No, you still own it." So I said, "No, you own that airplane." So he had to come up with a couple engines, and they flew it back to Arizona.
Okay. Well, we look forward today to having our guests here and get a chance to see what they do here at Rickenbacker, the 121st, and the organization that sponsors this is called the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR, and we're an organization under the Department of Defense made up primarily of volunteers, which I am, and our sole purpose is to try and strengthen the relationship between the reservist, National Guard or reserve member, and the employer that hires them, that they work for. When I got into the Guard way back in the 60s, you might get called to active duty one time in a 20-year career, but these young men and women today are getting called up over and over, and it's pretty tough on their civilian career. So if they don't have the support of their employer and the support of their families, then they're going to get out. So we want them to stay in, and they can do that if their employer supports them. So that's the purpose of this visit today, is to most of these people that are going to be going up with us on this flight have reserve members that work for them, and they have recommended to me, their boss, to go on one of these flights. So we just wanted to continue to encourage them to support that reserve member that works for them.
That's a great program. Well, thank you very much for talking with us, and my pleasure to meet you.
Well, my pleasure.
This is the closest I've ever been to a major general.
Well, we're going to have fun today.
Okay. One more thing. There's a General Dan Hahn in Akron that we interviewed. I interviewed his wife because I wanted the military spouse attitude on a military career. And she says, I said, "What's the most thing you remember about when he moved up from field officer to a general officer?" And she says, "We got a bigger house." Later they wanted that cut out. Well, thanks again, General. My pleasure.
My pleasure. He knows what it's like to be in the business community and trying to balance that with a family and with and being in the National Guard. He's now full-time with the Air National Guard, but He's had some great experience flying fighters, transports, tankers now, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from our host, Colonel Mark Allen.
Thank you. Thank you, Gerald. It's always a delight to be here. And so, on behalf of the daughters and sons of Ohio that serve here at the 121st, welcome to your base. Hopefully you're going to enjoy some time meeting some of your airmen at your base and flying on one of your airplanes. It is exciting to hear about everybody's background. So we have folks from all over the state, which is always kind of wonderful. I'll ask a couple questions to get things started, and I'll be fairly brief. I only have a couple slides, but it kind of helps kind of frame the discussion today. How many air forces do you think exist in the United States Air Force? It's a little bit of a loaded question, and I share that because, when we talk about the United States Air Force, it really is like a three-legged stool. So there's the active duty Air Force, which has about 330,000 airmen in it, and those F-22 Raptors that you just heard peeling in the break that are here fleeing from Hurricane Matthew, and are staying with us for a little bit. There's the Air Force Reserve, which has about 75,000 folks in it, right? And some units, if anybody lives over by Youngstown, or Youngstown, the C-130s there are in the Air Force Reserve. The C-17s over at Dayton at Wright-Patterson are in the Air Force Reserve. And then there's the Air National Guard, right, which has 105,000. So we're all trained to the same standard. Our uniforms all say the same thing. When we deploy, it's seamless. But there's some slight differences in that the Guard, the Army Guard and the Air Guard, we are the direct descendants from that first muster at the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1638. We are the constitutional force that is defined in the U.S. Constitution. And then you have the federal forces. If you have a reservist, an Army reservist, a Naval Marine, those all are reserve. If they're in the reserve, that's what's called Title 10. And we are what's called Title 32. So it's just a U.S. law. So what that means is the active duty and Air Force Reserve, Naval Reserve, Marine Reserve, they work, their chain of command goes directly to the President of the United States all the time. In the Guard, Army Guard and Air Guard, our chain of command goes through the governor of the states that we're in, or territories or districts. Talk about the 50 states, territories, and District of Columbia, 54 entities, until the president asks for those forces. And the governors always give them, and then we're mobilized, and then we go off and do whatever we need to do. That's important because when we're in Title 32, it allows us to serve you immediately. The federal forces can't come and help our communities when there's an algae bloom in Toledo, or there's a tornado or a flood. But the governor, our governor, can call us immediately and say, I need you to go help your friends and neighbors in Akron, in Youngstown, right? And we can go because of these different laws. Again, it's seamless downrange, but the reality is it allows us to respond quickly to our friends and neighbors here in the state. Okay? So the Air Guard's a pretty big piece of it. And who do you think has the majority, the preponderance of the KC-135s in the Air Force? Any guesses? Guard. The Guard. The Air National Guard has the majority of the KC-135s. And out of those 19 wings of KC-135s in the Air National Guard, any idea what wing is the busiest wing in the Air National Guard?
121st.
That would be the 121st. Your friends and neighbors, right? So basically, we go somewhere every 8 months. So either to the desert and fight in the war there, or we go to the Pacific because of the Pacific has the tyranny of distance, and so you need tankers to move airplanes around and things like that. So we're very busy. Hard lineage goes back to World War II, from different units. If you go back one slide real quick. Our patch, all things at all times, is kind of our motto. So at the end of the day, at the end of our quick visit, just us together, I'll ask you the question, is that just puffery for those of us who have been in business? Can we prove up that slogan? Are we really doing it? Or is that just chest thumping on our part? So I'll come back and ask you that question at the very end. Next slide. Got to know where you were to know where we're going. Next June will be the 75th anniversary of air power being generated off of this ramp on behalf of the American people. 75 years. 1942, they started training Army glider pilots here for World War II. The following year, the Women's Air Service pilots, the WASPs, were here. Trained over 6,000 B-17 crew members on how to fly the Flying Fortress right here at your base. Obviously fought the war. Following the war, the famous Tuskegee Airmen, right? The red-tailed angels that never lost a bomber that they escorted and fighters. But when some other states weren't welcoming, Ohio was. And so the Tuskegee Airmen came to Ohio, came to this base. As a matter of fact, the first African-American general in the Air Force was the former commander here, General Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. His house still stands on Shook Drive, on Shook Road. And he was pinned, had his rank put on to be the first general, African-American general, by his father, Benjamin O. Davis, Sr., who was the first African-American general in the United States Army. Tuskegee Airmen actually won a big award, a big competition, gunnery competition in 1949 out at what is now Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. They flew from here to engage in that competition and won it. And the trophy they won is actually in the Air Force Museum. And when we go down there on our leadership journeys, we always stop and stand in front of that trophy that they won here at their base. Obviously, Cold War took place in the 50s and 60s. This was a massive base. It continued to grow. We're really the benefactors of the Strategic Air Command now. They had an air defense system called Carry, which is basically a rock spelled backwards. It was designed by the French and built by the Japanese. It was all microprocessor based. It was very, very good. And they had a lot of stuff. So we would typically go up on both sides of Baghdad, east and west, and make a big pinch movement and go into the suburbs or downtown. So, you know, one night we're coming up the west side, up by the big lakes, which now you know is the Sunni Triangle. On our right was going into Baghdad. We're engaged by a surface-to-air missile. My Wizzo, who sits in the right seat, you know, we're watching. We have some stuff in the cockpit that tells us. We can also have some audio that we can hear. A radar is painting our airplane, is looking at us, going from an acquisition radar to a target tracking radar, which is the radar beam the missile rides to impact, right? So we get some indications on that. The other indication was him screaming that we have a missile launch right 5 o'clock low. So kind of down here behind us, not quite behind us, but down right below. So I make a hard break to try to put some turn, put some angles on the missile, and start dispensing a countermeasure called chaff, which is basically a pack. It looks like a pack of cigarettes, but it's got some aluminum dipole in it with a squib, a little explosive in it, that basically creates a bloom, and hopefully the radar sees that versus your airplane. So we have 84 bundles of chaff. It's in the pneumatic system. It uses air pressure to puke these things out when I flip a switch. And it's parallel, it's series, not parallel, meaning that I got to get, you know, 1 all the way through 84. Even though there's 3 channels, you got to go through all one channel, then the next channel, and the next channel. Well, I get about 4 bundles of chaff out, and all the pneumatics would blow off, right? No more air left to push it out. So, well, now what, right? This is a fine mess you have us in, right? So here we are, sideways, now I'm basically upside down. We're at high altitude, a lot of fuel, a lot of bombs, actually medium altitude. And so the airplane starts to basically stall, stops flying. I've used up all my airspeed, trying to get as many angles as I can on this missile to try to create some mist distance between our aircraft and our little bodies and that thing that wants to do us harm. So at this point, he's yelling, the stick's shaking, the rudder pedals are flopping, there's horns going off, Mr. Isaac Newton is now in charge. You know, he's flying the airplane. Because I'm done, and I'm out of ideas. I'm upside down, and I'm whistling for you. Now, that impact doesn't happen. And why doesn't it happen? It's not because I'm a very good pilot, because, again, I'm upside down, I'm out of airspeed, and my Wizzo's yelling. The impact doesn't happen because we have a piece of technology called a jamming pod, an ECM, electronic countermeasure, 131 deep dish pod, but that's neither here nor there. That was provided by the American people. It was provided by the taxpayers. That can help do some magic. We'll just leave it at that, right? And that magic gave me a second chance. Gave me a do-over. Just like as a battlefield airman, when the American taxpayers provided my men body armor that you could release with one hand, so when you get hit by an IED and you're chucked out of your Humvee and you're face down in a frozen creek in Afghanistan, and that kit that's there to save you will kill you as you drown, you can pull with one handle and all your plates fall off and you can breathe. You can come to the surface. That's a gift from the American people. You gave all of them a do-over. So St. Ambrose says, there is no task more urgent than that of returning thanks. St. Ambrose said, there is no task more urgent than that of returning thanks. Next slide. So, I want to say, on behalf of thousands of combat veterans that serve you and the American people, thank you. Right? Because I've had to do over because of your generosity, as they have. And we all know it. And we're all grateful. And it's hard for us to express it. So here's a picture. When I went to that war and was upside down and was wondering if I was going to get a second chance that you gave me, he was 3 years old. Now, after enlisting in the Army Guard, now he got his commission, now he's a first lieutenant, now he flies Chinooks, CH-47s, and he will deploy next summer to Afghanistan, right? Because he will serve the American people, and he'll take care of his soldiers. He's married now to Lauren. We're going to have our first grandson, first grandbaby, in December. December 6th, when he's counting. My wife, Nancy, was born in Andrews Air Force Base. Her father was an Air Force officer, right? Grew up around it. Ellen, Princess Ellie, our middle child, doing great things, but I would have never had Ellen. We would have never had Ellen, because I wouldn't have been here without that jamming pod that you gave me, or the body armor that comes off. Or Tiger Mitchell, our baby, who's finishing up his last year at Georgetown, who wants to come home, if he can get in, do as well enough on his LSAT, and get into OSU, you know, and maybe become a public defender, right? And serve the people, right? So the greatest gifts of my life, a treasure of inestimable value, is a gift from the American people. So, thank you. It seems so inadequate, doesn't it? Me saying thank you, doesn't it seem inadequate? I don't know what else to say, but I wouldn't have any of it. And I'm no different than thousands of people, just like you. So, I will end by the way I started it, by saying welcome. We are glad that you're here to fly on your airplanes, at your base, with your airmen, right? From the daughters and sons of Ohio, right? We are very, very happy. things at all times. Overseas, at home, in our community. Are we all things at all times? Or is it a little bit of puffery? Is it a little bit of marketing on our part? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. But I think you'll be pretty happy about what your friends and neighbors are doing here. We always say, back in the day, the British Empire, when Queen Victoria reigned, they had a phrase that said, the sun never sets on the British Empire. We say here, maybe it's a little boastful, but it's accurate. The sun never sets on the 121st. Even when we're not deployed to the desert, we have airplanes and crews in the desert supporting other units that can't. And I guarantee you, my friends and my neighbors, that the sun never sets on the 121st. So thanks for coming out and seeing your airmen, seeing your base. Enjoy the day. I think you're going to have great weather. And if I haven't said it enough, I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you. Yes, Colonel.
The replacement airplane, that's 767, can you say a few things about that? When do you think we could get some?
Yeah, in the 17 PB, the 17 presidential budget, they identified the need for 470, it's all public record, 479 tankers to do the Air Force's mission. Because also part of that mission, which we don't talk about, but remember another famous Ohioan is Curtis LeMay, who is the father of Strategic Air Command. And for every B-52 that he bought a KC-135. So for the B-52 to do its mission in nuclear deterrence, you needed a KC-135. So there's lots of things that these airplanes are needed for. And so the Air Force says we need 479 of them. They're going to build 100, they're going to buy 179 KC-46s, which is a 767 that's basically configured or built to be a air refueler. A Boeing product, just like this is a Boeing product. So even when they fuel all of them, once they get to the buy of 179, they'll divest 51 KC-10s, but that's going to leave 300 KC-135s that they have to have. So here, we are in the competition to get the KC-46. They picked, there'll be a number of guard bases to get it. They've had one round of selection, and that went to Pease in New Hampshire. We were in the top 5 in that category. I think our competitive position is even more competitive today than it was the last time. So I think anytime in the next several years, they'll look at us again. And I'm not panicking if we're not selected in the next round either, because every day it gets better out here. There's major infrastructure projects that have been done, asphalt, I know it's not very sexy, water lines, sewer lines, all that stuff's done. Major remodels are online for the hangars, and we're getting the flight sim for the KC-135 as well. So people will travel from all over the country to go to Columbus, fly in our airports, eat in our restaurants, stay in our hotels to train here. So even if we're not selected for the KC-46, which I'm not saying that's not going to happen, I want it to happen, but if it doesn't, they're going to fly these airplanes for the next 30 years, and your base here at Rickenbacker is ready for another 30 years. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're doing everything that we need to do, but we really are here just to serve you, and I think we're in a good position to do that.
I understand a lot of this asphalt's going to get used here the next few days as Matthew hammers the East Coast.
Absolutely. There's already, you'll hear some more today. They're very sensitive about, people being very close to the F-22 because there's some magic on it. So today, there's already a bunch of F-22s out on the ramp that came in yesterday. More will come in today. The Navy may be showing up as well. Last hurricane, earlier we had the famous Flying Tigers from 23rd Fighter Wing at Moody were here. So this is a recovery base that other active duty Navy and Air come to when they have to get out of the way of a storm. So it's going to get busy here. It's going to get loud for the next couple of days. We actually have to drive you out to your airplane in a little different route, just so. And I know you will, but please don't take pictures of the F-22. It's silly because you can go to an air show and you can see it, but they really don't want you to. I'm sure the Chinese have plenty of those photos, but so it's busy and the ramp is filling up. And we're excited excited to have them here. They're staying in our hotels and eating in our restaurants. That's very good. Is there any other questions? Okay, well, yes?
How many tankers do you have here on a regular basis?
12, but we used to have more, and they divested, they moved some of those around. We used to have 18, we used to get Super Wing. But at any one time, like I was sharing, it's just to give you an example. So we were in the Pacific this spring, right? So remember in January, the little guy in North Korea, right, detonates an atomic weapon, says it's a hydrogen weapon. In February, he launches a satellite. In March, he produces a video that shows a mushroom cloud exploding on the U.S. National Mall. Then he starts launching sea-launched ballistic missiles without a warhead in them. Most of them fail, right coming out of the tube. But then here, later in the summer, he launches one, goes 200 miles, penetrates the Japanese air defense identification zone. So when he does things like that, that's how nations communicate with each other. He's making a statement. Well, so do we. We do that by launching a B-2 bomber from Whiteman in the middle of Kansas. That's nuclear capable. It doesn't have a nuclear weapon on it, it could. And they fly halfway around the world to fly right outside of his airspace. None of that happens without the tanker. The tanker it's pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Without tankers, fighters become air show only things, right? Bombers, you can't launch that C-17 with life-saving medicines to help mitigate suffering in Pakistan after an earthquake without the tanker. I mean, they can, but they have to stop somewhere, land, shut down, refuel, but we fuel them. And it saves all kinds of time, and it gives all kinds of range. So the tanker is like the internet to your email. How frustrated you get when your email doesn't work? Right? Because I don't have enough bars, or I don't have any connectivity. Well, without tankers, everything stops. And so it just, it always happens kind of behind the scenes. So even when we're here, we're gone. So as an example, when we were in the Pacific this spring doing the nation's will, we had one airplane in Utapao, Thailand. We had one airplane in Diego Garcia. We had one airplane at Anderson Air Force Base in Guam, and one airplane at Hickam. And we had an airplane in the desert. We had an airplane in Germany. And we had an airplane in Depot being all tore down and rebuilt. That's not atypical. So even though we have 12 airplanes, you might come out and go, well, it doesn't look like you have any airplanes. Well, that's because they're your friends and neighbors. The daughters and sons of the state are everywhere. All things all. Right? Sun never sets on the 121st. Right?
Thanks,
So
Mark.
thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Well, we got a gentleman sitting here, Colonel Mark Auer. I'm pronouncing your last name right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, Colonel, you gave us a great talk there. And if I wasn't 91, I'd rush right up and ask for enlistment papers and start all over again.
Right. Well, we want you back when we need you. So let's talk with the recruiting right after this. We'll get you back in.
Yeah, the last time I told the guy about coming down here, he says, God help us all.
Oh, it's all good. It's great.
Okay, anyway, your career, can you give us a rundown on your military career? And what prompted you to get into the Air Force?
Okay. Well, it's a great question, and we're really happy to have you here, by the way. And thank you for your service. So,
Thank you.
So guys like you is why I joined. So my father went to sea at 17 in World War II in the Pacific. And all my uncles were combat veterans, including Uncle Ray, who landed Omaha Beach, Wave 1, Day 1, was one of 4 men in his company to survive through World War II. And I had another uncle who was at Iwo Jima and Saipan and at Tarawa, wounded 7 times. So when I grew up at the knees of heroes like you, when they would all get together and play pinochle. So I always wondered, how could I pay you back? How could I pay your generation back? How could I pay my father back? And it seemed like the only way that I could do it was to try to pay it forward. So I thought, this is what I should do. Right? Because you gave me all these things.
Well, how did you go into the become commissioner ROTC?
I
Okay. Oh, really? What college?
I went to the University of Iowa. I originally went away to school, actually to play football, and I was going to a small school. And if you listen to my knees, you'll know why I don't play football anymore. And so then I'm the first in my family to go to college, and so football was the ticket out. And so once I got there and I had to stop playing, I found out I could transfer to the University of Iowa and try to compete for a pilot scholarship in Air Force ROTC. And I did, and I was lucky enough to get one, and that's what allowed me to continue my education and to get my degree.
I guessed right because I saw you standing up here. That guy looks like he played football and he still works out.
A little bit. I was a linebacker.
I guessed right.
That's right. Yeah. I wasn't very good, but I had a big heart.
He joined the club.
Right. So I got my commission, and my wife and I went off to active duty, and we went to pilot training in Wichita Falls, Texas at Shepherd. And it was a special program called NJEP, Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. So it's run by the NATO Alliance. So I was trained by NATO fighter pilots. And then my first assignment on active duty was to go to Europe and to NATO, and I flew F-111s at RAF Lakenheath. So I was in East Anglia, which anybody from the World War II generation would know is where all the big bomber air bases were in Europe, the B-17s, B-24s. And so we actually lived in villages where we would go out and ride our bikes on former B-17 runways. And so grew up there, deployed a lot, fought Desert Shield, Desert Storm, a lot of no-fly zone enforcement, armed reconnaissance to protect the Kurds and to enforce the no-fly zone in northern Iraq. And then we came home, and I left active duty to fly F-16s in the Guard. And so we came home so that our children could know their grandparents. So our oldest son is named after my father because I think a lot of my dad. And I wanted my son to know my father.
Oh, wonderful. Now, are any of your kids pilots now or in the military?
Yeah. Charlie, the one that's named after my father, is a pilot, and he did it. He didn't want to come into the Air Force because he didn't want anybody, or the Air Guard, because he didn't want anybody to think that he got in because of his old man. So he went off and enlisted in the Army Guard, and did a wonderful job. And they gave him a commissioning opportunity, and right now he's a first lieutenant, as a platoon leader. He should be making captain shortly, and he is a pilot flies the CH-47 Chinooks, the heavy lift helicopters.
You're a real military family. You mentioned your dad. Now, did he fly also? Was he a pilot?
No, my father was. He was a screaming seaman, and his main job, his general quarters position was to catch hot shells on a 3-inch gun. And so he was on the USS Jupiter aviation supply ship, and then he was on the USS Rendova, I think it's CVA 114, which was a Jeep carrier, a light carrier, and so that's kind of how I grew up.
In primary training, what did you train on?
Well, we flew, at the time we were still flying the T-37, which was a jet, a Cessna jet. Now it's been replaced
Tweety Bird.
The Tweet Bird, yeah, the 6,000-pound dog whistle. Could convert fuel into a real screech. It would be hard on your ears. Flew that for primary, and then we flew the T-38 Talon, which is the supersonic.
You really moved up when...
Oh yeah, and it's very slippery. I mean, because there's no drag on it. I mean, the jet flies the way it was drawn on paper. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, they're still using that, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They're still using it now. They're looking at maybe getting something new, but they're still flying the T-38 and then the AT-38, which they put a gun pod on it and in a head-up display, so we could learn basically how to be baby fighter pilots before we went to our aircraft, our follow-on aircraft.
Now, when did you transfer? What airplane did you do your transition training in?
So I went from the T-38 to the AT-38 out at Holloman in New Mexico, and then from that to the F-111. There's several models. I was at Cannon in New Mexico on the C and the D model. Did that for about 6 months. I went to Lakenheath, which was the F model. Different engines, different avionics, and some different mission sets in Europe. I did that for a number of years. Then to the F-16A model. And then from there, that unit eventually converted from F-16s to C-130s. So then I learned to fly the C-130E and did that for about 10 years. Then became a battlefield airman. Took about 10 years away from flying, and then came back and I flew the C-27J, which was an all-glass cockpit. up in Mansfield, Ohio. I was their ops group commander and got them out of the C-27J and into the C-130, the H model, H2. Flew that for a while, and then here at Rickenbacker as the wing commander, and then I've been checked out in the KC-135R.
That's a great career. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure to hear you guys.
Yeah.
I could sit here all day and talk and listen to you, Colonel. Thanks again.
You bet. Thank you, and thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Run through a whole bunch of computer systems. It's had its own test flights that are just computer run. This thing, when these guys first took it up, they're like, all right, well, we think it's going to be good, and went through the wind tunnel. Good luck. So yeah, it's incredibly amazing that this thing is going to fly. It's going to fly for, I think the engines are rated at least till, like, don't quote me, but I think 2025, and they're not going to start phasing this out until probably 2030s maybe. All right, here we go.
started to get back a little bit, it'll tell you to move forward. If you get a little too high, it'll tell you to move down. So it'll keep you right in that sweet spot that they like to have you. And then there was I don't know if you noticed, a yellow stripe down the belly of the airplane. That kind of helps with asthma. You're back there refueling. So, well, back when, way back when Shaker and I got into the Guard, my kids used to tell their friends that I flew with the Wright brothers, but that's not true. Knew them, but I didn't fly with them. But anyway, when we got in, the Guard, all we had to fly was whatever the Air Force was done flying. It was a hand-me-down. So it was give you whatever was left. That's what our F-100s were old, and then after Vietnam, when the active duty started cutting back, they wanted to rely more and more on the Guard and Reserves because it's a lot cheaper. As Colonel Auer was talking about, it's a lot cheaper to have a force here that can do the same thing as an active duty force, but only a small percentage is getting paid every day. So as more requirements fell onto the Guard and Reserve, they started giving us better equipment. When we started flying the A7, for instance, we picked up airplanes right out of the factory, brand new A7s. So we started getting new equipment, and right now the Guard and Reserve units are flying first line equipment, just like he was talking about getting the new tanker. We hope to get those right out of the factory. So, but along with that came some extra requirements. Like when Shaker and I got in, we might do a 20-year career and maybe get called to active duty one time during that period of time. And now these young men and women are getting called up all the time. And that's tough on their families, and it's tough on their civilian jobs. So that's why ESGR was formed, to try to do what we could with a group of volunteers to strengthen that relationship between the employer and that reserve member that works for them. So that's why we do this, to show you what your Guard and Reserve members are doing. You saw a little bit of the Air National Guard today, but it's all of the reserve components are actively doing real world missions all the time. Just want to emphasize that. Support that reservist that works for you. Hire new ones. We know there's a trade-off because of getting called to active duty here and there, but we also think that you get a good employee when you hire a reserve, a Guard member. They get a lot of leadership training in the military that can carry over into the civilian world. You're getting somebody that's drug-free. They get drug tested on a regular basis out here. So there's some pluses that go along with the minuses. There are, in your folders, there are statements of support. We'd like for everybody to sign one of those and just tear off the bottom part. You can keep the top part for suitable for branding, whatever. All it really is saying is that you support that Guard or Reserve member that's out there doing their job. You're not saying you support the war, you support the administration or anything else. You just support that reservist. So that's we're required to get as many of those filled out, showing that we get out into the community as much as possible. Interesting how many of these I will see in a frame walking into a business somewhere, and there will be hanging up, might be in a city hall or a pizza place or whatever. They're there. So I don't know if you all met Michelle when she joined us late, but Michelle also is a full-time employee and with ESGR. And let's see, anything else that we need to talk about in the packets? I think there's a lot of good information in there about contact information. If you ever want to get a hold of somebody to talk to your organization, there are laws that protect the reservist and protect you as an employer. And sometimes there are misunderstandings as to what the rights are of the individual or the rights are of the company. And we've got experts on that can sort that out, work with you, give briefings on that if you're interested in it.
It's called the USERA.
Yeah, that's the law, USERA.
And has a little handbook if anybody wants to. There's all kinds of materials up here that we'd like you guys to pick up and take with you if you'd like. This talks about the law. It's a long acronym, and we just call it USERA all the time. But it's the Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. And there are provisions that do protect the soldier, in their job and their situation in case they ever have to, get deployed or even just drill week and things. But also, there's things that, it also protects you as an employee. So mainly, the important thing is keeping an open line of communication open with your military service people, your Guard and Reserve folks, so that they can communicate to you. Typically, they can give you a year in advance their training schedule for drill weekends, so that you guys know when they're supposed to drill, when their annual training comes up. They don't always have, typically they'll know deployments that are coming up unless they get a shortfall where they just get pulled in to fill a spot. Unless it's a state emergency, like right now, the hurricane in Florida, there's going to be Guard units probably mobilized last minute for that kind of stuff, and those kind of things are unavoidable. But we all know that's serving the community, and that's really important. That's what the National Guard does. But we also are referring to reservists as well of all branches. So we have ombudsmen that can help you work through issues. If you're having a problem with your military, employee, you can call the ESGR office, and we will refer you to one of our ombudsmen. They're specifically trained to handle these kind of situations and to advise you. And hopefully, we can work things out without there being a lot of issues. And we're there for you as well as for the soldier, sailor, Marine, whoever it is that's in your employ. So
I was thinking when you were talking about the states down south, and when Colonel Auer was talking about how the governor has access to the Army and Air National Guard in times of emergency, well, you better